All the other games in this series were mystery adventures. This game's genre is more like historical education. Box art has a close-up of Joanna over a close-up of Joanna. The floppy disk on the box art is the wrong color. All of the puzzles are exactly the same on junior mode and senior mode. Someone should tell Nancy what email is. Beach Hill gives Nancy a job through a postcard.
I was just checking the lock on this display case.
The display case has no lock. Game trolls us with a unique character model for Nancy, which we don't get to see. Nancy introduces herself to her new boss while lurking in the shadows. Since all the lights are off except one, that means Nancy and Joanna were forced to walk through the entire museum in the dark to get here. How did the lights get turned off? The museum doesn't have light switches.
Is that Jade?
Nancy's dialogue doesn't appear in the text box.
There isn't another piece like this in the world, and it's priceless.
With an intro like that, there is no way this Jade piece will make it through the game without being stolen.
And it's priceless.
The monolith has a price, but this small piece of jade doesn't. Joanna casts no reflection here, but casts a reflection here. Joanna casts a reflection, but Nancy doesn't.
You'll meet him later.
Joanna's lips are not synced with her dialogue.
Who is King Pakal?
Nancy did absolutely no research on the museum or the Maya before taking this job.
So we'll be relying heavily on our volunteer staff. Namely, you.
I quit. The museum can afford $1 million exhibit, but it can't afford to pay more than 2 employees. If Nancy isn't getting paid for this job, how can she afford to travel to DC and live out of a hotel for 2 months? It's not like she has money left over from solving any of her previous mysteries.
I told him I don't even want to see his pointy Vander head till he's got a translation on that monolith.
Henrik's boss told him to translate the monolith, but instead of doing that, he's dusting the pottery.
Shouldn't I have more training?
Or, any training whatsoever. Joanna keeps all the good artifacts hidden inside of her office. What does Joanna do all day? She's supposed to be preparing for the exhibition, but whenever we see her, she's looking at a microscope. I don't know what's more unrealistic, the museum not having bathrooms or the museum not having a gift shop. Did you have enough time to see that glyph? I hope you did, because you'll need to know it for a puzzle, and you can't zoom in on it later to double check what it looks like. Sunny June forces Nancy to search the entire museum for the 5 items he scattered around randomly. Sunny June is a jerk. 5 points off for Taylor's character design. I don't know what's freakier, his penciled mustache, his puffy lips, or his sloppy bald man comb-over attached to a full head of hair. Also, 5 points off for Taylor's tie. Instead of introducing himself like a normal person, Taylor walks up to Nancy and silently stands behind her until she notices him.
I'm Sinclair.
Taylor introduces himself by his last name.
Can't we talk now?
Just meet me later.
Taylor starts talking to Nancy about the thefts, then cuts off mid-conversation and forces her to visit his office to continue. Taylor is a jerk. Taylor has already stolen 2 of the monolith keys at this point, which means he translated the monolith long before Henrik did. Either Taylor is secretly a language expert, or Henrik has been lying about his qualifications. Henrik's flesh-colored shirt makes it look like he's topless.
Why are you wearing that mask?
So her interactive can save on animation.
Howdy.
Henrik is a creepy cowboy. We have 6 phone numbers spread out over 2 screens, but we can only call half of them. It would make much more sense if the 3 phone numbers we can call were together on 1 screen. Nancy can cross this task off her list before Henrik tells her she doesn't have to do it. Sunny's notebook contains a blatant advertisement for justadventure.com. Task list items are crossed off here, but not here. It's not obvious where you need to click in order to rotate the board. Game trips up players by giving clues for number pictures that don't appear in this puzzle. This puzzle requires way too much back and forth traveling between the puzzle and the exhibits. Washington, D.C. is filled with all sorts of interesting people and places, none of which we'll see in this game. Washington, D.C. has a Mexican embassy, not a Mexican consulate. Mexican consulate has no security, waiting times, or receptionist. Alejandro meets Nancy and instantly accuses her of being a conquistador. Alejandro is a jerk. Rich art dealer has that painting hanging in his office. Taylor asks Nancy to solve the crimes that he committed. Culprit foils their own plot. Taylor warns Nancy about the robbery he's planning to commit at Beach Hill. Again, culprit foils their own plot.
The police are on their way.
Joanna's lips are not synced with her dialogue. By complete coincidence, all of the suspects were in the museum at the time of the robbery. We just didn't see them because they were hiding. Mystery doesn't start until an hour and a half into the game. Joanna goes from her office to the crime scene to this doorway in under 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, Henrik had enough time to steal the Pakal, leave the handprint, and escape without being noticed.
I'm curious about the red handprint the thief left. Does it have any significance in Maya culture?
Afraid I can't help you there.
Joanna is an expert on the Maya, but she can't answer simple questions about Maya culture.
That mercuric sulfide is highly toxic. Makes you crazy.
Nancy carries the toxic handprint with her for days without any negative side effects. I like the spooky Scarlet hand, but it raises way more questions than it answers. Whose handprint is it? How did they make the handprint with a toxic substance? Why doesn't anyone try to identify the culprit through the fingerprints? Does the handprint Henrik left match the handprints that Taylor left at the other crime scenes? If so, how? If not, why did nobody notice there are 2 different handprints and deduce we've got 2 different culprits? Why doesn't anybody but Nancy follow up on the glyphs written above the hand? Why don't the police take the hand as evidence? And isn't the handprint more crimson than scarlet? To trigger the cutscene of Henrik falling, you have to go through a specific doorway in a specific direction. A lot of people got stuck here since there aren't any clues indicating that's what you have to do in order to progress. Henrik's fall takes place off-screen to save on animation. Henrik's left arm is above his head in this shot and below his head in this shot. We never learn what caused Henrik to fall. Was he attacked by Taylor or was it just an accident? Why can't we investigate this? Henrik gets amnesia in order to drag out the story for another hour.
My mother posts my old prom pictures on the internet.
Joanna's prom dress. What was she thinking? At the start of the game, Nancy didn't know what monoliths or glyphs were, but when she talks to her friends, Nancy pretends she knew that information all along. Alarm clock reused from previous games. Nancy's computer has a fire icon in the lower right, and I have no idea what it does. Nancy's hotel room has no bathroom. It takes too long to scroll through all of Nancy's notes in order to get to the one note you need.
He has repeated your name several times in states of semi-consciousness.
While semi-conscious, Henrik regularly calls out the name of a teenage girl he just met earlier today. I told you he was a creepy cowboy. Nurse Bluefoot has 2 spaces for Henrik's allergies and only 1 space for family members. I guess he magically knew ahead of time that Henrik has more allergies than kids.
And I kept going.
Why does Alejandro make a swooshing sound at the end of this sentence?
So I do not have to answer any questions, but I will.
Alejandro is immature. Henrik can't remember his own name, but he definitely remembers all the specific circumstances surrounding the writing of these glyphs. Henrik's pecs change size when he switches rooms. I guess taking off the mask makes him less buff. If Pakal didn't want anyone to open up the monolith, why did he hide the keys instead of destroying them?
Looks like I need to find someone who speaks Nahuatl.
No, you don't. Just look up the answer on the internet, Nancy. Jeez. You have to talk to Franklin about Prudence Rutherford before Joanna is picked up by the police, otherwise you'll never be able to call Prudence, making it impossible to win the game.
I've spoken to the rest of the board and we've agreed that the best thing is to put you in charge.
Board of Directors puts an unpaid intern who started work yesterday in charge of a $1 million exhibition that's already been robbed. Nancy's promotion to the head of the museum does not include a salary increase. Nancy's promotion doesn't include taking on any additional responsibilities. Game forces you to sit through 15 minutes of phone calls, manually dialing 10-digit phone numbers. Unlike the previous games, the phone numbers you need are not listed in the caption box. You have to memorize all of those phone numbers.
Check out that Bool game.
Wait, is that how you're supposed to pronounce bull? Curse of Blackmore Manor lied to me! This puzzle. The museum quizzes require way too much back and forth traveling between the quiz screens and the exhibits. The quizzes don't save your progress, so every time you leave to look up the answer in the museum, you have to start over from the beginning again. The museum has not one, but 2 quizzes with answers that aren't found in the museum itself. The matching puzzle requires way too much back and forth traveling between the puzzle and the exhibits. Make a single mistake with a matching puzzle or the ball game puzzle, and you're forced to restart from the beginning again. Maze Puzzle does not give you enough time to read this pop-up. Maze Puzzle reused from game number 3. This is a creepy lock. This audio glitch. You can call the daddles from this phone, but not this phone.
I think it might help my memory of Nahuatl a lot.
Government agent blackmails Nancy into stealing documents for him.
The artist, formerly known as Penelope, is OOC, OTH, TDT, and generally not in the mood.
I have no idea what any of those things mean. Henry Daddle gives out his daughter's phone number to a complete stranger. Nancy normally takes things without asking, but with Poppy's jade piece, she asks permission first, so there can be a puzzle. Poppy calls Taylor Big Bunny multiple times, and Henrik's notes talk about a criminal named Big Bunny, but Nancy never draws a connection between the two.
So you'll call Joanna and invite her back to work?
I'll call her right away.
Joanna reappears in her office 5 seconds after this. That must have been one quick phone call. Nancy throws out the rest of Prudence's necklace. Taylor's cookies!
I'll be right back. I hope.
Bathroom humor. Taylor conveniently leaves his office right when Nancy needs to snoop there. Taylor doesn't notice Nancy defaced this painting. Taylor never noticed this painting had one of the jade carvings he was trying to steal. Conveniently, 2 of the jade pieces Nancy needs are already located inside the museum. The monolith was moved from Mexico to the United States, but all 4 sides are still facing the correct direction. Nobody thought to put a calendar plate on this side of the monolith, even though the other 3 sides all have one.
I'm not sure I can hold on to these stones for very much longer.
Unless Nancy is carrying them towards the monolith, in which case she can hold on to them for as long as she wants. Nancy doesn't think to take 1 stone at a time to lighten the load. Game expects you to remember which directions are associated with which carvings. Was it really necessary to get all 6 keys when only 4 of them are pressed into the monolith? The monolith has impossibly complex locking technology, considering that it was made out of stone in the 600s.
I guess we can't all age gracefully.
Taylor's mouth is not synced with his dialogue.
It's blank.
Who's your friend, Nancy?
Taylor should be close enough to hear Nancy say this, but at the end of the game, he is confused to find that the book is blank. Why is there a blank book in the monolith? Did Pakal put it there just to mess with potential robbers? If so, this 1,300-year-old practical joke worked perfectly. Nancy easily escapes from the monolith, which was created as an inescapable prison. Instead of using this bar to escape the monolith, the Whisperer hid it inside of her mouth.
Meanwhile, the foolish villain stews in the sour soup of his own miscalculation.
Characters' mouths aren't synced with their dialogue. Once again, all the suspects are in the museum at the same time, but Nancy didn't see them because they were hiding. Why did Henrik get released from the hospital so quickly? What were these 3 doing when Taylor attacked Nancy and escaped? Were they standing here preparing their poem? Why is the animation quality here so much better than in the rest of the game? End of game gives Henrik a free pass on robbing the museum and working with smugglers.